Let's continue the discussion. Let's bring in former National Security Advisor, General H.R. McMaster. He's also a CBS News foreign policy and national security contributor. So, General, good to see you, my friend. This is the first major shakeup of the Trump administration. You served in that role. I just want to get your take on Signal Gate, as it's been called, and if you, when it happened, an inadvertent mistake, or you're surprised by the fact that Waltz wasn't removed immediately after this?
Hey, Vlad, I remember when we talked, I said, hey, it's a mistake. It's terrible. What they should just do is say, okay, it was terrible. We made a mistake. We're never going to do anything like this again. What were we thinking? And I asked the question rhetorically at the time: is the country better off or worse off? If Mike Waltz leaves, and worse off, really. I mean, I think he was doing a good job. I mean, Mike Waltz understood what his role is. His role is to get the president best advice, to get the president multiple options. But when you're effective at doing that, and when you're fighting to do that, people who don't want to give the president multiple options, people who want to manipulate decisions to advance their own agenda, their own worldview in the area of foreign policy, they begin to resent the National Security Advisor. And I think much more than Signalgate, Vlad, that was really the dynamic here.
Yeah, it does strike me, General, that Mike Waltz, along with his deputy, Alex Wong, who's a lifelong conservative, has served under multiple conservative presidential administrations, were probably, if you look at the way the administration is shaping up, two of the more astute and perhaps even level-headed and very aware of the roles that they played when it came to national security. In other words, Mike Waltz is a highly decorated soldier, just somebody that you would want when you're trying to figure out some of the geopolitical strategies and the risks that the United States are involved in now. And so then what does the future look like? I know that Secretary Marco Rubio is now wearing this hat, but conceivably, just how well could you do? I mean, we've talked about this before, even going back to my ROTC training. I've always, you have one job and you do that one job well. How well could the Secretary of State also act as National Security Advisor? It's a really big job.
Yeah, you really can't do both jobs, Vlad. And the thing is, the National Security Advisor is the only person in the national security foreign policy establishment who has the president as his or her only client. And so you're there, all day, every day, and your job is to staff the president, make sure the president is prepared for any engagement on foreign policy. You have to run a process that gets best advice to the president, and again, gets him those multiple options. You have to communicate the president's decisions and actions, not just to the State Department, but to every department and agency that has a hand in foreign policy. You have to help the president foster unity of effort with allies and partners, and you have to lead an organization, the National Security Council staff, to provide them with, what I'm sure you learned at Army ROTC, provide them with purpose, motivation, and direction. And so you can't do all that and run the State Department. I mean, of course, Henry Kissinger did it for a while, and he once told me, he had a great sense of humor, actually. He said, the relationship between the State Department and the National Security Council, or the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, has never been better than when I held both positions. But I think this is going to be temporary. I hope the president picks somebody, he has great confidence in, obviously, and who understands his or her role. What you're supposed to do for the president's national security advisor. But as you alluded to, Vlad, there'll be people, man. The knives will be out for whoever that is, because there are people who have this worldview that is based on a desire to retrench, to disengage.
Right.
These are, the people who call themselves the restrainers, and they want to cut the legs out from the NSC staff and the National Security Advisor because they've been affecting kind of a slow takeover of the Department of Defense, for sure.
Well, I mean, the fact that you have somebody who's a right-wing flamethrower who says extremely controversial things, who can influence the president into deciding whether or not he should keep or fire somebody serving under him is already incredible. So last question for you, General, is should the president instead have asked Pete Hegseth to resign as defense secretary. Was the wrong man let go?
Well, it's all up to the president, right? I mean, everybody there serves at the pleasure of the president. The president has to have confidence, trust in whoever's in that circle. I'll tell you, Vlad, I want them all to succeed, man. I mean, but I'll tell you that what concerns me, as you already alluded to, is this kind of worldview. And it counts against people like Alex Wong. It counts against people like Mike Waltz that they served in previous Republican administrations, because many of the people who have the president's ear, and as you mentioned, the people who are in his ear whispering, hey, this person's a globalist. This person is obstructing your real agenda. That's not Trump's agenda. That's their agenda to retrench and disengage from complex challenges abroad. They blame these people. They blame the so-called neocons, anybody they label as a neocon, for the problems in the world, more than they blame people like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei. So I think that's what's kind of playing out here, is this battle for the future of the Trump administration's foreign policy.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, General. General H.R. McMaster, always great to have a conversation with you, sir. Thank you very much.
Hey, great to be with you, Vlad. Thanks.
Thank you.